What if I told you your brain is not on your side? What if the very thing you trust to make decisions, build discipline, chase goals, and create success is secretly working against you? You say you want to wake up early, but you hit snooze. You say you want to focus, but you scroll. You say you want to change, but you repeat the same habits. So here's the uncomfortable truth: your brain doesn't listen to you. And if you don't understand why, you will keep fighting a battle you can't win. Because this isn't about motivation. It isn't about willpower. It isn't about laziness. It's about wiring. Your brain has one primary job: not success, not happiness, not achievement, survival. Thousands of years ago, survival meant avoiding predators, conserving energy, and staying safe inside the tribe. The human who took risks unnecessarily didn't survive. The one who conserved energy did. Fast forward to today. There are no lions chasing you. There are no freezing winters you must endure without shelter. But your brain hasn't evolved as fast as your environment. So when you try to wake up at 5 a.m. to work on your dream, your brain interprets it as danger. When you try to speak up in a meeting, your brain interprets it as social risk. When you try to start a business, your brain interprets uncertainty as threat. And what does it do when it senses threat? It pulls you back to comfort. Comfort feels safe. Safe feels familiar. Familiar feels controllable. And controllable feels like survival. That's why you procrastinate. That's why you doubt yourself. That's why you sabotage your own progress. Your brain is not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to protect you from a world that no longer exists. And here's the most powerful realization of all: you are not your impulses. You are not your fear. You are not your resistance. You are the one observing them. The moment you understand that your brain is wired for safety, not growth, everything changes, because growth requires discomfort. And discomfort triggers alarm, and alarm activates avoidance. So when you say, "Why can't I just be disciplined?" you're asking your survival system to prioritize expansion over protection. That's not how it was designed. But here's the good news: you can retrain it. You can rewire it. You can build a brain that works with you instead of against you. But first you must understand what's actually happening inside your head. And that's where we begin. Your brain is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. But here's the problem. You are asking it to do something it was never trained for. You want long-term results in a short-term survival system. And those two things are in conflict. Inside your mind, there are two powerful forces constantly negotiating your behavior. The first is the emotional brain. Fast, reactive, automatic. It scans for danger. It seeks comfort. It avoids pain. The second is the rational brain. Slow, logical, strategic. It sets goals. It plans. It thinks about the future. Now here's the shocking part. The emotional brain is faster. It reacts in milliseconds. Before you consciously decide, it has already influenced your behavior. That's why you reach for your phone before you even realize you're bored. That's why you snap at someone before thinking about the consequences. That's why you quit right before the breakthrough. Emotion beats logic and speed. And in moments of stress, speed wins. When you're tired, overwhelmed, uncertain, your brain defaults to efficiency. And efficiency means habits, patterns, familiar behaviors, even if those behaviors are destroying your progress. Because from your brain's perspective, predictable pain is safer than unpredictable growth. Think about that. Predictable pain feels controllable. Unpredictable opportunity feels dangerous. So when you decide to change, to start waking up early, to eat healthier, to build discipline, your rational brain sets the intention. But your emotional brain asks one question: is this safe? And if the answer feels uncertain, it pulls the emergency brake. Not because you're weak, because you're wired. Most people try to overpower this system with motivation. They yell at themselves. They shame themselves. They promise themselves that this time will be different. But you cannot shame a survival mechanism into silence. You must understand it. You see, your brain does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you repeatedly do. It doesn't listen to your goals. It listens to your patterns. Every time you avoid discomfort, you teach your brain that discomfort equals danger. Every time you follow through despite resistance, you teach your brain that discomfort equals growth. And here's the shift. You don't need more willpower. You need repetition in the direction of who you want to become. Small, consistent actions signal safety to your emotional brain. And when something feels safe, your brain stops fighting it. So the question isn't, why don't I feel motivated? The question is, what have I trained my brain to expect? Because whether you realize it or not, you are always training it. The only question is, are you training it for comfort or for growth? Let me tell you a story. There was a man who decided he wanted to change his life. He bought the books. He watched the videos. He wrote down his goals. He felt inspired. And for 3 days, he was unstoppable. On day 4, he felt tired. On day 5, he skipped one small habit. On day 6, he told himself he would start again Monday. And nothing dramatic happened. No disaster, no crisis. Just a quiet return to normal. Now here's what's fascinating. He didn't fail because he lacked intelligence. He didn't fail because he lacked desire. He failed because his brain valued identity over intention. Your brain is not loyal to your goals. It is loyal to your identity. If deep down you see yourself as someone who always quits, your brain will guide you back to behaviors that confirm that story. Because consistency of identity feels safe, even if that identity limits you. This is called cognitive consistency. Your brain hates contradiction. It wants your actions and your self-image to align. So if you say, "I'm not disciplined," and then try to act disciplined, your brain experiences tension. And tension feels unsafe. So what does it do? It nudges you back toward behaviors that match who you believe you are. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your self-concept. That's why some people can make a decision once, and it sticks, and others must decide every single day, and still struggle. The difference is not motivation. It's identity. If you believe you are someone who keeps promises to yourself, then keeping promises feels natural. If you believe you are someone who procrastinates, then procrastination feels predictable. And predictable feels safe. Your brain will protect your identity at all costs. So when you try to change behavior without changing identity, you create internal conflict. And internal conflict drains energy. That's why change feels exhausting. You are not just building a new habit, you are dismantling an old story. And stories are powerful. The brain doesn't respond to commands, it responds to narratives. So instead of saying, I need to work out, what if you said, I am becoming someone who trains consistently? Instead of saying, I need to stop procrastinating, what if you said, I am learning to act immediately? Do you see the shift? One is pressure. The other is identity evolution. Your brain resists who you tell it to be, but it supports who you repeatedly prove yourself to be. And the moment your identity changes, your behavior follows. Let's go deeper. Your brain doesn't just protect your identity. It protects your energy. Every decision you make costs energy. Every new habit requires energy. Every uncomfortable action demands energy. And your brain is obsessed with conserving it. Why? Because for most of human history, energy meant survival. If you wasted energy unnecessarily, you didn't make it. So your brain developed a shortcut system, habits. Habits are the brain's way of automating behavior so it doesn't have to think. When something becomes automatic, it requires less energy. That's efficient. But here's where it gets dangerous. Your brain doesn't care whether the habit is good or bad. It cares whether it's familiar. Scrolling your phone at night, familiar. Avoiding difficult conversations, familiar. Delaying your goals, familiar. Familiar equals efficient. Efficient equals safe. So when you try to create a new habit, waking up early, reading daily, exercising consistently, your brain sees it as expensive. It requires attention, effort, focus, and your brain asks a simple question, is this worth the energy? If the reward is unclear or too far in the future, your brain says no. This is why short-term rewards overpower long-term goals. A donut gives you dopamine now. Scrolling gives you stimulation now. Avoiding a hard task gives you relief now. But building a business, that reward is months or years away. Getting in shape, weeks away. Mastering a skill, years. Your brain discounts delayed rewards. It overvalues immediate comfort. That's not weakness. That's biology. So when you feel resistance, it's not because you don't care. It's because your brain is calculating cost versus reward in real time. And if the cost feels immediate and the reward feels distant, it will default to comfort. Here's the shift. If you want your brain to cooperate, you must shorten the reward loop. Celebrate the small win. Track the tiny progress. Acknowledge the effort immediately. When you attach instant meaning to small actions, your brain starts to see them as valuable. And when something feels valuable, your brain is willing to spend energy on it. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself endlessly. It's about designing your environment so the right behavior feels easier. Reduce friction. Prepare your clothes the night before. Keep the book on your desk. Remove distractions from your workspace. When you lower the energy cost of growth, your brain stops fighting as hard. You don't defeat your brain. You design around it. And when you do, you stop relying on motivation, and you start building momentum. Now let's talk about fear, because most of what you call procrastination is actually protection. When you avoid starting something important, it's rarely about laziness. It's about emotional exposure. Your brain asks, what happens if we try and fail? And failure isn't just an outcome. To your brain, failure threatens belonging, status, identity. And thousands of years ago, losing status in the tribe could mean isolation. Isolation meant danger. So your nervous system still reacts to modern risks. Public speaking, launching a project, expressing an opinion. As if your survival is on the line, your heart races, your palms sweat, your thoughts scatter. And you interpret that sensation as a sign to stop. But here's the truth. That sensation is not danger. It's expansion. Your brain confuses unfamiliar with unsafe. And the more ambitious your goal, the more unfamiliar it feels. So the stronger the resistance. Think about the first time you tried anything meaningful, the first presentation, the first workout, the first investment in yourself. It felt uncomfortable, not because you weren't capable, but because your brain had no evidence that you could survive it. Evidence changes everything. Each time you act despite fear, you collect proof. Proof rewires perception, and perception reshapes behavior. But most people quit before the evidence accumulates. They interpret anxiety as a red light, when it's actually a green light. Fear is often the border between who you are and who you're becoming. If there's no resistance, there's no growth. And yet, we've been conditioned to avoid discomfort at all costs. Comfort has become the default. But comfort is not neutral. Comfort is addictive. Every time you retreat into safety, you strengthen the neural pathway that says, avoid this next time. Avoidance feels relieving in the moment, but it compounds long term. Confidence works the same way, in reverse. Confidence is not a personality trait. It is stored evidence. It's your brain saying, we've done this before. We survived. We can do it again. So if you're waiting to feel confident before you act, you will wait forever. Action creates confidence. Not the other way around. Your brain doesn't need certainty. It needs proof. And proof only comes from movement. So the next time you feel fear rising, don't ask, how do I eliminate this? ask, what identity is this fear protecting? Because on the other side of that question is the next version of you. Let's talk about control. Because your brain craves it. Uncertainty is one of the biggest stress triggers in the human system. When the outcome is unknown, your brain starts predicting worst-case scenarios. It fills in the gaps with doubt. It prepares for impact, not because you're negative, because prediction equals preparation, and preparation feels like control. But here's the paradox: growth requires uncertainty. Starting something new means you don't know how it will end. Changing careers, building a business, committing to a new routine, none of it comes with guarantees. And your brain hates that. So what does it do? It creates the illusion of control by keeping you where you are. Staying in the same job feels controllable. Repeating the same routine feels predictable. Living inside the same patterns feels manageable, even if you're unhappy, even if you're unfulfilled, even if you know you're capable of more. Because predictable dissatisfaction feels safer than unpredictable possibility. Read that again. Predictable dissatisfaction feels safer than unpredictable possibility. That's why so many people stay stuck. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack opportunity, but because their brain prefers certainty over potential. Now here's the deeper layer. Your brain doesn't actually need full control. It needs perceived control. Small signals that say, we can handle this. That's why clarity reduces anxiety. When you break a big goal into small, measurable steps, your brain relaxes. When you schedule the first action, instead of thinking about the entire journey, resistance lowers. Because now the unknown becomes manageable. You don't need to know how the whole story ends. You just need to know the next move. Your brain panics when it sees the mountain. It calms down when it sees the next step. This is why overthinking paralyzes you. You're trying to solve problems that don't exist yet. You're demanding certainty before commitment. But certainty comes after action, not before it. And the people who move forward are not the ones who eliminate fear. They're the ones who build tolerance for uncertainty. They train their brain to see the unknown as exploration instead of threat. And that changes everything. Because the moment uncertainty stops meaning danger, it starts meaning opportunity. And when that shift happens inside your mind, your behavior follows. Now let's confront something uncomfortable. Your brain is addicted, not to substances necessarily, but to stimulation. Every notification, every scroll, every like, every quick hit of novelty, your brain releases dopamine. And dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure, it's the chemical of anticipation. It makes you seek, it makes you check again, it makes you crave the next update. And the modern world has mastered the art of hijacking that system. Your phone is not neutral. Social platforms are not accidental. They are engineered to capture attention, because attention is currency. So when you try to sit down and focus on something meaningful, reading, writing, building, your brain compares it to the high speed stimulation it's used to. Deep work feels slow, growth feels effortful, entertainment feels effortless, and your brain will always choose the faster dopamine reward if you let it. This is not about discipline. This is about chemistry. When your baseline level of stimulation is high, normal tasks feel boring, and boredom feels uncomfortable. But here's what most people don't understand. Boredom is the gateway to creativity. Silence is the birthplace of insight. When you remove constant stimulation, your brain recalibrates. At first, it resists. You feel restless, irritated, distracted. That's withdrawal from overstimulation. But if you push through that phase, something powerful happens. Your focus deepens, your thinking sharpens, your patience increases, because you are training your dopamine system to respond to meaningful effort instead of instant gratification. The problem isn't that your brain doesn't listen to you. It's that it has been trained to listen to everything else. And every time you give in to distraction, you strengthen that pathway. Neurons that fire together wire together. So what do? You create friction for distraction. Turn off notifications. Leave your phone in another room. Designate specific times for checking messages. And you reduce friction for focus. Clear workspace. Define time blocks. Single task commitment. You are not fighting technology. You are reclaiming attention. Because where attention goes, identity grows. If your attention is fragmented, your progress will be fragmented. But if your attention is disciplined, your life becomes intentional. Your brain will adapt to whatever environment you repeatedly expose it to. So the question is not whether your brain can focus. The question is, what have you trained it to crave? Let's talk about self-talk. Because the most powerful voice your brain listens to is yours. Every single day, you are narrating your experience. I'm bad at this. I always mess things up. This is too hard. I'm just not that kind of person. And here's what's happening beneath the surface. Your brain does not evaluate whether those statements are true. It evaluates whether they are repeated. Repetition equals belief. Belief shapes perception. Perception drives behavior. If you repeatedly tell yourself that you're not confident, your brain starts scanning for evidence to support that identity. It highlights your mistakes. It magnifies your awkward moments. It ignores your wins. Because your brain's job is to confirm the story you keep telling. It wants consistency. So the words you casually speak become commands. Now here's the deeper layer. Negative self-talk feels strangely safe. Why? Because if you lower expectations, you reduce emotional risk. If you say, I probably won't succeed, and then you don't, it hurts less. Your brain thinks it's protecting you from disappointment, but in reality, it's protecting you from growth. Because growth requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels exposed. So instead of risking hope, you choose familiar doubt. But here's the shift. You don't change your life by forcing positive affirmations you don't believe. You change your life by changing the narrative slightly and consistently. Instead of, I can't do this, try, I'm learning how to do this. Instead of, I always fail, try, I'm building resilience. That subtle difference matters, because your brain can accept progress more easily than perfection. Language shapes neural pathways. When you use empowering language, you activate different emotional states. Those states influence decisions, and decisions compound. You become what you repeatedly declare. And here's something even more powerful. The tone you use with yourself determines how long you persist. If you speak to yourself with contempt, you burn out faster. If you speak to yourself with respect, you endure longer. High performers are not people who never struggle. They are people who struggle without attacking themselves. Your brain listens to your internal dialogue more than any external voice. So if you wouldn't speak to someone you love the way you speak to yourself, why are you accepting it internally? Change the voice. Change the direction. Because the story inside your head is building the person you become. Now let's talk about environment, because willpower is overrated. You think success is about being stronger. It's not. It's about being smarter with your surroundings. Your brain is highly sensitive to cues. It responds to what it sees, hears, and repeatedly experiences. If junk food is on the table, you will eat it. If your phone is beside your bed, you will check it. If negative people surround you, their mindset will leak into yours. Not because you lack discipline, because your brain is wired for adaptation. It constantly scans the environment and adjusts behavior to match it. That's how humans survived. We mirrored the tribe. We adopted shared norms. We aligned with the group. Belonging meant survival. And that wiring still exists. So if your environment normalizes distraction, comfort, mediocrity, your brain relaxes into it. But if your environment normalizes focus, growth, accountability, your brain adapts upward. You rise or fall to the standards around you. This is why changing your life sometimes requires changing your room, your routine, even your relationships. Because environment shapes identity faster than intention. You don't need to become a different person first. You need to step into a different environment. Think about this. When you walk into a library, you whisper automatically. When you walk into a gym, you feel an urge to move. When you walk into a chaotic space, your thoughts feel chaotic. Your brain adjusts to context without conscious effort. So design your context. If you want to read more, place books where your phone used to be. If you want to wake up earlier, move your alarm away from your bed. If you want to think bigger, spend time with people who challenge your thinking. You don't need constant motivation. You need intelligent exposure. And here's the deeper truth. Your brain seeks social proof. If everyone around you is quitting, quitting feels normal. If everyone around you is building, building feels normal. Your standards are not created in isolation. They are calibrated by proximity. So ask yourself, does my environment support the person I want to become? Or does it reinforce the person I'm trying to outgrow? Because your brain will always choose the path of least resistance. If growth requires constant internal battle, you will exhaust yourself. But if growth is embedded in your surroundings and momentum becomes natural, and when the environment changes, behavior follows. Here's the final piece. Everything we've talked about, wiring, habits, identity, fear, environment, comes down to one simple truth. Your brain doesn't listen to commands. It responds to patterns. It doesn't care about motivation. It cares about repetition. It doesn't care about hope. It cares about proof. It doesn't care about your plan. It cares about your experience. And that is both terrifying and liberating. Because the moment you realize this, you gain control in a way most people never will. You can't force the brain to obey. But you can create conditions where it chooses to cooperate. You do this by designing your identity, your environment, your language, and your actions to align with who you want to become. Consistency matters more than intensity. Small wins matter more than huge bursts of effort. Evidence matters more than promises. Your brain learns through what actually happens, not what you say should happen. Every time you follow through despite fear, fatigue, or doubt, you wire a new pathway. Every time you act according to your desired identity, you confirm it. Every time you remove distractions and design your context, you train your brain to support you. And here's the secret no one tells you. Transformation is cumulative. It doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in the invisible repetitions, the small victories, the decisions that no one else sees. Your brain will resist at first. That's normal. That's survival. That's why it feels uncomfortable. But if you persist, if you keep showing up, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's uncertain, something extraordinary happens. The resistance fades. The fear diminishes. The habits solidify. The identity shifts. And then finally, your brain starts listening. Not because you forced it, not because you screamed at it, but because you designed your life so that listening was the easiest, most natural choice. So stop fighting your brain. Stop blaming yourself for resistance. Stop hoping motivation will carry you. Instead, understand it. Work with it. Train it. Because your brain doesn't listen to commands, it listens to consistency. And when you master consistency, when you align your identity, environment, and actions, you unlock a force far stronger than willpower to brain that works for you, not against you. This is the truth that changes everything. The journey isn't about fighting your brain. It's about outsmarting it, step by step, day by day, until one day you look back and realize you are unstoppable.